welcome to Run, Build, Grow, the podcast that laces up its running shoes and dives deep into the heartbeat of the communal spirit of running. I'm your host, Andrew Ware, the RunninRev, and I'm thrilled to take you on this exhilarating journey where we explore stories that go beyond the pavement. All right, y'all, that was a bit of a shorter intro. You didn't hear anything about anybody else, about any guests that I'm having on today. That's because this is a special episode. This is a special one. Again, I want to welcome you back to Run, Build, Grow. On January 5th, 2024, I released the first episode of Run, Build, Grow. It featured Melissa Moser, the leader of Run OV here in Hampton Roads, and it kicked off a journey of me hopping on here just about every Friday. There were a couple there that I missed, and it happens, but just about every Friday and now Saturdays, I have had an episode of Run, Build, Grow in your podcast feeds. Can you believe I have been at this? You have been listening, maybe not for a year, but we've been at this for a year. And I've been so grateful for this journey, for all of you who have tuned in, those of you who have shared feedback, left comments, left reviews, and have been a part of this growing community. There have been 51 guests on Run, Build, Grow. And one thing that I am super proud of, one of the things that I wasn't sure if it was going to happen. I set my sights on it. I set my goals on it. I acted like it was going to happen. But I've had 51 guests that have spanned across the United States. I think as I last checked, I am up to 13 states in my 50 states of guests. Thank you, Aaron Kunst, one of my guests who kind of challenged me to try and see if I could get 50 guests or all 50 states covered by guests. Now, I mean, obviously 13 and 51. I mean, you know, that's pretty awesome. A lot of those early episodes were friends of mine from down here in Virginia, especially in Hampton Roads, in the Richmond area. As I started to get more comfortable with the podcast, as I started getting on more guests, I started to think to myself, hey, I think I have an opportunity to maybe reach beyond the community that I, quote unquote, know, because a lot of that early time was inviting on friends, people that I knew, people I have shared miles with, people that I've done races with, people who have been influential in my own running journey. And over time, I thought to myself, I'm like, man, I feel like I can go beyond this. I feel like I can look beyond this. And really, it was as things started to kick off and things started to get bigger, I started to look beyond the Hampton Roads area. And it was really connecting guests that I had to, guests that had an awesome story as well. And so you'll remember, like, one of my first, I guess, we call them out of town guests was Vanessa Peralta Mitchell back on episode 22. And thank you, Nakia Young, for helping to connect that. And that really started this cascade of guests from all over the country. We had Katie Wax White, her husband Osti was on, Paisley, Roz, all of these folks, Ezra, Amanda, all of these people who really helped to reach far beyond just the Hampton Roads community and move into a space where we can start seeing, what do other run communities look like? What are these places what can we learn from other places? What do we learn from other people? How do they help us to grow as well? And those were the stories that I really got into, that I really got interested in. And I think as you saw, as the podcast continued to go on, I began to get more comfortable. I've never been uncomfortable asking people, talking to people, basically cold calling. In fact, it's one of the traits that I have as a pastor that kind of makes me really good at what I do. I can start up conversations with people. And so it wasn't that. It was more just thinking, like, I wanted to find stories to share with you all. I wanted to find things to connect this communal spirit of running to help us all grow together. And I think as I continued to do that, I began to see how much of an impact a single person has on an entire community. And I knew that, right? That's something. It's like I know that that's an impact. I know that one single person can have an impact on an entire community, and I also know that it takes a village in a lot of ways as well. And I got really interested in hearing various stories and connecting with various people. And so I made it kind of a part of my plug when I asked people on after I finished interviewing them. And I would just kind of ask them and say, hey, can you give me like a couple of folks that you know that just have amazing and awesome community run stories and that help me to connect to just some amazing people. You know, I began to see as more and more people were coming on that I began to make the more and more of these connections. I began to, form these relationships with folks that help me continue to see the big wide world that is out there and how much running can play a role. And I think you saw during the podcast that it plays a role in so many different shapes, right? I mean, so many of the interviews went from the vastness of running and doing running and connecting running and being a leader in the local running community. But I think we also saw in a lot of episodes how running communities can help to transform the communities around us, right? We heard from James Dowell really early on with Prolific Run Club in Chesterfield, who helped us to really begin to see this intersection between the racial undertones within the running community. And especially that began to play out as I interviewed, Joe Robinson, and we talked really deeply about Detroit. And honestly, that's something that I want to continue to dive into, to how running community helps to shape sort of these social issues that we have and how running in community can help us to overcome all of these things. We heard from all of these different guests. We heard from guests who are almost seemingly at the top of their game, who are just running amazing times, doing amazing things. And we heard from runners who have this joy. They're out there for the fun of it. They're doing things. And not that the faster folks aren't doing it for fun. They are. But we hear from all different levels of the sport. We hear that running it's not a you need to be this size, you need to look this way, you need to run this fast. It's a sport that has been transformed by communities coming and gathering together, and what that has looked like for a lot of different ways. We have seen runners trying to accomplish amazing things, and we have heard about runners just trying to do amazing things, and all of those different things that have gone into it, of what makes each one of their journeys. I was trying to think, what is one episode, one topic, one thing from just the last 51 episodes. And I mean, it's so hard to even begin to think about that. I mean, I have had so many great conversations with so many great and awesome people, from my conversations with Jerry and Amy Frostick, who had become such great mentors, such great idols for me here in the Hampton Roads community, as I am a JNA ambassador, helping to be a part of these awesome, great community races that help to bring a lot of these people together, to interviewing friends of mine like Mike Couch, like James Moore, like Caitlin Kirchhoff, like Katie Wax, all of these people, to people who, before I started this podcast, people I had never known, never met. Bobby Kritzelis, Ashley Van Loozen, Ezra, Morgan, Aaron. I mean, all these people who I had never known, never heard of in my life. And yet through the podcast, I've been able to connect with amazing people. And so I don't have like a favorite episode. I don't have one episode that is like so amazing, so great. I mean, again, I've gotten to interview some amazing, awesome people, and each story holds a special place within the story of this podcast, the story of what community could look like, should look like within each one of our places. And one of the things that often sticks out in my mind, there's a couple of quotes. Again, looking back through a lot of these episodes, I didn't listen to all of them, but I remember a lot of moments, and a little bit is recency bias. I have a little bit better memory of things closer up. But I remember in that conversation, maybe you remember it too, with Joe Robinson and us talking, he gave us that whole rundown of the Detroit running community and talked about it. And he talked about like people trying to replicate Run 313 and what they're doing and everything they're doing. And he said, it's almost impossible. And we mentioned in the episode how, it is, because I can look at run groups like Run 313, Pasadena Pacers, Bobby's Bagel Runs. I can't remember the actual name of it, so Bobby, remind me in a message. All of these different groups, and there is no one magic formula to make the best run club ever. It's looking at the community that's there and finding what works for what is here, what works for us, what can help us to grow as a community together and build us up. And that was one of the great, I think, lessons that I took away. And it manifested itself vocally in that episode with Joe, but I think it's always been there as an opportunity to talk and reflect on running as a community, right? There's no one real answer, but I think when we look at other run communities, when we hear their stories, it inspires us to such amazing things. And one of the things that I really loved doing was I loved interacting with my community, knowing sometimes that my running community was listening to this podcast. A lot of them did and would comment on it, but just knowing what I learned from the podcast and bringing that into the community and kind of bringing up the topics and helping us all to learn and grow together. This podcast on a personal level has really felt transformative. It's taught me how to be more intentional, right? It's taught me how to think more critically about the community that surrounds us, and beyond giving me a creative outlet, right? Because hosting a podcast is kind of something I've always wanted to do. Well, not always, but ever since my ADHD brain kind of took over back during the pandemic. However, it's been a great creative outlet. I've been able to reuse lessons and tools that I haven't used in a while, but also it's allowed me to be more conversational in how I talk about running. And even one of my great, pastoral vocational desires, which is community. And I've been able to talk about community, especially community when it comes to running, when it comes to movement, when it comes to activation. And it's really offered me an opportunity to bring these episodes to you to really give credence to this communal spirit of running and what that looks like and what it means. And it's allowed me to learn what that communal spirit looks like, not just in my community, but in all the communities, and what we can learn from one another. Because, for me, my running journey is placed in community. And if you want to hear more about that, go back to episode 21. It's called the solo episode. This is going to be called the solo episode part 2. I don't know. I might come up with a better name before it publishes on Saturday. But you can hear about my running journey from there. But the last year has been a really interesting one, because while I've been leading this podcast, I've been on this interesting journey as a runner where this year has been an absolute roller coaster of a time on the run. Why? It started really back in June of 2023. I might have mentioned it where I hyperextended my knee and had to come out of running for a few months, really let that recover and come back. And, I got back into running, and it's not that I did anything, in the quote unquote incorrect way. And I've been wrestling with what that means, the correct way versus the incorrect way to do something in running. And, a lot of times medically, right? Medically, there is a right way to return to run. And it's not even like I broke those, unwritten rules, or it's not like I went against doctor's orders. But returning to running in last fall was kind of really difficult. And it wasn't the spark, it wasn't the joy. But the speed that I had never really came back. I never got fully back into it. And, I kind of wrestled with a few things, and I was getting back in the groove of running. And I mean, I was still doing events and doing everything, but really, when the calendar turned to 2024, my mindset kind of shifted because getting back into running had been difficult. And I felt like I had in somewhat plateaued in a way in my running and where I was with my speed and my strength as a runner. And I kind of hit this level and I wasn't going anywhere. And mentally, I kind of decided that instead of allowing that to kind of push me down, to pull me back, that I was going to reshift my focus. And in a lot of ways, that in and of itself was a little mentally difficult, right? I went into the Shamrock Marathon weekend back in March, and I was super pumped. I was going to give it my all in the 8K. I was going to see where my fitness was, and I did really well. I gave myself a nice little surprise, not a PR, but really got out there and tried my hardest, and then came out the next day for the half marathon and helped some friends of mine PR in their half marathon goals. And that was really awesome and really great. And yet I came out of that race not feeling well. And this was physical. All right. I about halfway through the half, I really did a number to my Achilles. That's my assumption. Looking back on it now, really did a number to my Achilles, and took some time off, kind of let it recover. I didn't have anything else on the calendar, and I told myself, all right, you know what? I'm going to do the thing that I hate to do. I'm going to get back into running in the summer, which I hate because it is not just hot here in Virginia, but it is humid. And it may be cliche, but yes, that humidity will kill you. Um, but I started to get back into it, and over the summer, it was clicking slowly. And I felt like I was making progress, and I was starting to get back into things, and I was starting to feel good on the run again. And then all of a sudden, as the fall comes in, eh, my Achilles was just really tweaked. I don't know if that's the right word. It did not feel good at all. I was having trouble, not just running, but I was having trouble walking. I remember coming up limp, just coaching at my new energy kids. I couldn't not only couldn't run, but I couldn't walk. I'm like limping back to where we normally start, and just at that point in time, feeling really deflated. This year, it wasn't one where I was going to be hitting PRs, where I was going to be hitting goals. It was supposed to be my rebuilding year, right? It was supposed to be the year that I just, I kind of let things come to me. I just get back into the groove of running. I get back into the consistency of running. I begin to feel good. I begin to kind of get that, running mentality back. And I think what hurt the most about it is because I never lost that spark for running. I love running. I cannot tell you how much I love to be on the run. I'm a better person when I'm running, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, just all of those things. I am so much better. And so I couldn't run. And yet I knew the important decision was to not run. And shout out to Coach Bennett, the Nike Global Run coach, who always talks about, know when to run and when not to run. Like sometimes not running is the best run you can do. And so I had to find this way to redevelop myself as a runner who wasn't running, and what it looked like for me to be a part of the running community. And this is where some of those episodes really come back and help me out. And I went back and listened to some of them. For a lot of these people who have experienced, these injuries, these hard times, Caitlin Kirchhoff, Aaron Kunst come to mind right away as two folks who dealt with big injuries and have come back. And the lessons they learned about perseverance, about never giving up, about dealing with setbacks, really helped me to kind of get in that right mentality. And so I went 3.5 months without running. And y'all, when I tell you that I had to behave, and I say that seriously, because we know what we sometimes do as runners, right? We try and run through the pain, we try and run through all of this stuff. And yet I knew that if I didn't take care of myself in this point in time, if I didn't stop and let my body heal and do it the right way, that it was going to be something that would make my life worse. I might lose running forever. And so that became a huge, crucial point for me in this journey, and something that I've struggled with towards the end of this year. And yet, again, those lessons about perseverance, right? About dealing with the setbacks, about finding the motivation when you just don't feel motivated, right? And it wasn't even motivated to run, it was just motivated to do things. And you see this not running, it's come with very difficult, consequences, ramifications. I tried to do it smart, I tried to do it great, but there were a lot of other things that were happening in this time. Last year in 2024, I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, right? I just wasn't sleeping well, and I knew it was impacting me. I have some sort of iron deficiency, and the uncertainty is my doctor and I still haven't figured it out. And so these are difficult questions that I'm still seeking answers on, and I'm still trying to learn and know. And they're part of my journey now. And it's caused me to reflect on this journey to kind of see what is important, right? As I'm getting answers and I'm seeing how important running is, it makes me not want to lose running. And so I had to stop running. And now I'm running again, and it's very slow. I'm taking it very slow. Just some walk-run intervals and getting back in it slowly, but really being intentional about how I return to run. And all of this has allowed me to really back up and focus on community, focus on the running community that I have at Run Samo with my friends around me, to focus on this podcast and to really think, what is this space? What can this space be? Right. And this is kind of where I come back and I start to look ahead. Right. I want to look ahead. I want to think, what is in the cards for 2025? What is in the cards? What is Run, Build, Grow doing this year? And, I've got an episode recorded, and I have some guests that are lined up and, ready to record. I'm ready to get episodes out. This is not like some of the other solo episodes or when I've missed episodes. I have stuff in the bank, but I really wanted an opportunity to do that retrospective work, right? I started the podcast by reflecting a little bit on the first year of the podcast, and then just taking that time to talk about where I am now on the run. But I really want to look ahead because I've got some exciting things that I really want to focus on, and I want to lay them forth to you all so that because you all are a part of this community. In my mind, I consider this, the RunninRev Run Club, and pretty much because I don't have a better name, but I created it, but I consider you all a part of it. Listeners, guests, you're all a part of this run club. You're all a part of this community that is being built, this genuine community that I'm hoping through which we can learn how to be better members of our local communities, our local run clubs, our local cities, our local municipalities, whatever it is. And so as I think about what I want to look towards for Run, Build, Grow, and even for myself personally, I want to continue to tell the stories. And that seems simple, right? To tell the stories, to Andrew, just do your job, host the podcast, right? That's kind of how sometimes this stuff happens. But I really want to break those stories down more. I want to continue to hear from new guests. And so, if you're one of those people, if you're out there and you're thinking, man, like, I have a good story about community, or even if you're hesitant, even if you're like, I'm part of a community, but I don't know if I have a story. Trust me, I've gotten enough folks who have come on here and have said like, oh, I've never been on a podcast before. This is my first podcast episode. Friends, to me, it doesn't matter. Your story is your story, and I'd love for you to share it. And I want to give a platform for people to share their stories, to share their struggles, to share how they experience community. And so I want to bring in more voices, experts, coaches, community members, everyday runners, front of the pack, back of the pack, elite, hobby runners, joggers, walkers. It doesn't matter. Because the community that we're building together is an inclusive one. It's all inclusive. It's all of us coming together. And we can learn and should learn from each other. And I want to keep broadening the conversation, right? It's not just you, but if you think that there's someone who would be a great guest, let me know. Email me, andrew@runninrev.com. These are things that I want to put out in the universe. I want to help us all grow. And I'm even thinking of other content. Well, not run, build, grow related. I'm hoping that I can do more writing on my Substack to start to bring more of those writing pieces about running, learning more about community, learning more about running. Because ultimately everything ties into the bigger vision for what I have, for what I see as my vision, my personal mission, right? And this podcast is one piece of that larger puzzle. The whole aspect of movement and self-care, and even for me as a pastor, the way that faith incorporates itself into that. And finding ways that a lot of that stuff can interplay together. And so, to keep this podcast going, to keep it as a voice for the communal spirit of running, and create space for that to continue to inspire, continue to uplift. In my writing, continue to bring you just what running community looks like, how we can be in community together. Maybe more about me. I also want to write some more devotional stuff, and so maybe even expect some of that. But I also want to hear from you all. What do you want to see in this podcast? What do you want to see from me as a, I guess, content creator? What are those things? I opened it up on Instagram, and sometimes it's hard because I'm not the most famous person, right? I mean, the number of hits I get either on the pod or on Instagram or anywhere is that of just a regular, average, everyday person. And to me, that's fine, because I know that one person listening to this podcast makes it worth it. One person who gets something from this podcast makes it worth it. One person reading and experiencing a feeling from my writing makes it worth it. That's why I do it. I mean, would it be awesome to have thousands of listens to every episode, thousands of downloads for thousands of people? I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, just like it'd be awesome to have thousands of people in my church every week. But I'm not hanging my hat on that happening. Right now, my true joy is sharing these stories with as many people who want to listen. Now, in that, I do hope that you'll share this stuff. I do hope that you'll put it out there to your friends, to your running community, to those around you, because, again, I want these stories to get out. But, a lot of times I feel like my job is almost done in a way. Like I still do some of that content work and post on socials and stuff like that. But, like, my job is done when I publish the episode, when I put it out on the podcast feeds, when I put it out online. That's when the job of sharing starts. That's where all of us kind of take a collective understanding and move into it. And so that's a little bit of a glimpse of what I'm hoping this year holds for me. I'd like to see the numbers go up. I'm not going to lie. Like I kind of would, whether it's on the podcast feed or it's on Substack or it's, on my socials. It'd be nice to. And that's why I encourage you to share it. Make sure you're putting it out there, because I do think that these are all stories worth sharing. And I'd love to see them get shared because I'd love stories like all of the ones that have been told, like Chris Elliott, like Julia Bowl, like Kathy Donovan, like, Kate Fletcher. Who else? I've had so many people on here now that these are stories that deserve to be heard. These are stories that have a real impact for the communities that they're a part of. And I think that these stories are worth sharing. And finally, in this episode, I'm really excited to share something that I've been working on for a while now. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know how much I value the intersection of running, faith, and self care. And today, I'm thrilled to announce that I'm officially launching a run coaching business. For those of you who may not know, I am a certified USATF Level 1 running coach. I earned that certification back in 2022 because as a runner and pastor, I saw it as an incredible opportunity to bring people together and to build community through running. And since then, I've had the privilege of working with kids in my local area, adults of all kinds, helping to give them advice and help them to understand running better. And it's been such a rewarding experience. And now I'm excited to take things to the next level and offer these services to even more people. So here's what I'm offering. Whether you're looking to run your first 5K, chase a personal best in a marathon, or just find joy in movement and become a runner, I want to help guide you. And the cool thing is that I want to provide coaching plans that are tailored to each individual, covering everyone. I've got one-on-one coaching to custom training plans designed for specific distances, specific races, and I want to be there to celebrate your progress every step of the way. I want to share what will make this unique, and that is that as a coach, one of my primary hopes is that through coaching individuals, I want to help anyone looking to connect wellness, self-care, and movement in a really meaningful way. And one of my core hopes actually is to engage in clergy support and wellness. Though you don't need to be a clergy to employ me as a coach. That's just something that I would love to do. And so if you're a clergy out there, reach out to me. But anybody who is looking for any sort of run coaching, any sort of guidance, if you would like a training plan that's personalized to you to help you through a training cycle, or you want more one-on-one coaching experience. Far too often, we neglect our health while pouring into the lives of others. And especially for clergy, that seems so real and true. And I want to help change that. I want to provide an opportunity for us to focus on self-care through movement and activation. Through my coaching, I aim to guide anyone seeking physical strength, mental clarity, or even spiritual renewal. And running can be a powerful form of self-care, a way to clear your mind, connect with yourself, and prioritize what matters most to you. And this focus ties beautifully, I think, into the mission of what this podcast, of what Run, Build, Grow is all about, exploring this manner of movement, of wellness, of transformation, spiritually, personally, and most of all, connecting this to a communal sense. I know that there probably is you thinking of ways of how's this going to be a community? What's it going to look like? And honestly, I don't know what that looks like yet, but I do know that the first step is kind of stepping out there and saying, hey, if you need a coach, if you enjoy hearing me talk, hearing me nerd out on a lot of these different things, and you say, man, he sounds like he would be a great coach, reach out to me, because at the end of the day, I'm hoping that this is more than just about running. I really want this to be about transformation, right? Whether you're lacing up your shoes for the first time or you're pushing towards a big goal, running can change the way you see yourself and the world around you. And I'm not just talking about losing weight. I'm not talking about your physical appearance. I'm talking about the way that you truly envision yourself. Right? My mission is to be a part of that transformational journey, walking or running alongside you, whatever it takes. I want to be there to help. And so here's how you can get started. If you're interested in working with me, I want you to head on over to my website, runninrev.com. You can go there. You'll see a coaching tab, or you can go to runninrev.com/coaching for more details. See some of the things that I offer. And here's the best part, all right? Your first 60-minute consultation is free. It's a no-pressure 60-minute conversation. We can talk through your goals, your challenges, begin to explore how I can support you, and begin to look at what it would look like to create a plan that is tailored to your needs. And hopefully I've done some hard work to make these services affordable, and I do want to respect each individual, but I also ask for you to respect the work that I put in as well. I am going to be charging for these services, but I do want to try and make them affordable, and so I'm willing to work with you. If you're someone who's thinking, I don't know if I have the ability or the funds to make this investment right now, let's talk. I do want this to be accessible, and I always feel weird wanting to charge for things like this. And I know there are people out there, even my coach offered to coach me, has coached me for free, and I've had folks who have done that for free. But, I really want you to see this as an investment in yourself, and I want to work with you on what that investment can look like. I do have standard prices, but I also want to work with you, and so we can see what, if anything, we can do. So to wrap this all up, I want to thank you again for hanging out with me. This was a bit of a shorter episode, though I did find room to talk for quite a while. I always do. And so I want to thank you for hanging out with me. If you have a great story that you want to share, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to have you on the podcast. You can email me at andrew@runninrev.com in the show notes. And don't forget, you can connect with me. I'm on Instagram, Blue Sky, Strava, Substack. That's pretty much where I hang out. I'm getting a little bit into TikTok, though, who knows what's going to happen to TikTok here soon. Again, all those links in the show notes. If today's episode, if you really liked it, or if you have anything that you'd like to see in this podcast, again, don't forget, let me know. Make sure to follow and subscribe, because again, this is like one episode, and honestly, if you made it through this episode, you're going to enjoy the others so much more. So go back, listen to those. Make sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen, or head on over runbuildgrow.com. You can catch all those episodes. That helps them get right there in your feed when they release every Saturday. If you have an extra minute, again, I would love for interaction. Let me know, right? Jump onto Apple Podcasts, leave a quick rating and review. Let me know. If you're on Spotify, you can drop a comment on this episode. You just say hey, I love this. In fact, if you have any suggestions from what I talked about in the other parts of this episode, drop a comment on this episode. Simple way. It can help others discover the show. It lets me know what is resonating with you. And if you leave a comment or a review, I'm going to give you a shout out in the next episode. And so we did get a comment on the latest episode on Spotify with PJ Thompson. The comments from Erin Kuntz, and this is great because I think we can all relate to what she says here, right? And actually, it's a quote from PJ. "I'm losing money if I don't sign up now. Story of my life." How many of us have ever said that? I'm sure most of y'all are raising your hands on the other side of this microphone right now. So Erin, thank you so much for the comment. Thank you for dropping in. It is always great to hear from you, to hear from others. Please help me out. And you know what? If you want to go that extra mile, you want to support the podcast, keep it going strong, if you could head to runbuildgrow.com/support, runbuildgrow.com/support. You can drop a one-time tip because you love this episode, just a one-time donation. I have those rated out at $5, $10, and then $13.10. So I kind of did 5K, 10K, half marathon there. Or you can become a regular supporter at $5 a month. Every contribution, it helps this community on and off the run. And so again, I want to thank you for being here, for being part of this journey, for being part of this run club. And until next time, go crush it out there. And as always, make every mile count.